am so happy to find this room this full. You know, I think we should give Ernie a round of applause. Yes, I have been with CICR for about 14 months now. We set up this room. We moved from our other offices, set this room up. This is the first time I think we are having it this full.
Right.
You know, so we are very happy to have you all welcome to our community of practice. This community of practice takes place once every month, and we usually pick dynamic facilitators with great topics to discuss among practitioners. Today, we have with us to facilitate this session, Ernest Tannis, whose name we all know very well. I know him as one of the founding fathers of CICR. I joined CICR about a year ago, like I said, and I had the awesome privilege of chronicling the history of CICR, and his name, of course, is all over, you know, the story. I've read so much about him. He's shared so many stories, like I feel I have known him for 35 years. So it's a privilege to have Ernie with us. Thank you so much for making yourself available and for bringing your friends. I look forward to the evening. He has already hinted me that it's going to be a powerful evening, so we are all expectant. And so to get us moving, I'd like us to introduce ourselves. But the introduction, it's not just, I want to know your name, and then in one word, just one word, you'll tell me what comes to your mind when you saw the topic for the discussion. It's conflict resolution for the next generations. So think about it, when you saw this topic, a lot must have come into your mind, but can you find one word that would just explain or say what your thoughts were? You know, is it curious, wonder, whatever, you know, that's what I want you to add. So you tell us your name and yes, and anyone wants to say your occupation. So you tell us your name and what you do and what word comes to your mind when you hear the topic.
Whether it's legal or illegal, just say that.
So who's gonna start?
Well, in that case.
I don't mind. So my name is, do I have to stand up?
No, you don't have.
My name is Jeanette Reichen. I've known Ernie since 2013 when I was a client of Ernie's, and then I became Ernie's executive assistant for 7 years, and that ended in 2022. And then we became business associates and best of friends, I would say. And yeah, so the one word I would think about would probably be hope.
Hope. That's wonderful. Thank you for starting us off so well. Next.
I would have preferred to wait, but that's okay. My name is Elizabeth Tavares. I'm here because of Jeanette and I know Ernie. I'm retired, lucky me, but I work for the government in a contracting position, buying things internationally, etc. So that was interesting. And I spent a good time here. I took mediation skills and conflict resolution.
Wow.
I took that here. So it brought back memories. So right away I went to the other building because I thought it would be there. And when I saw it, I said, oh, interesting. That's all I, you know, if it's one word. Yeah. I said, interesting. How would they, because we're all about the same age. And I said, how would the young people, you know, relate to this? So yeah, I'm interested.
Perfect.
Interested.
Yes.
Yes.
So we have hope, we have interesting. Next, please.
Dad doesn't speak English very well,
Okay.
so he wants to pass it over to
Oh,
me.
right,
I'm
that's
sure
fine.
he'll say something a little later.
Okay.
My name's Malika McDonald. I've known Ernie, I think, since the late 80s, when I was doing my PhD in clinical psychology over at the University of Ottawa. And I was doing something on the opioid crisis. And Ernie was kind enough to come over to meet me, because he was writing an article on it at the time, and share his article with me. And then after that, we ended up working together for many, many years at the ADR Center. And during my time at the ADR Center, we worked on many, many things, but there was one particular time when Ernie roped me in to coming to CICR. It's a long story, one that maybe we won't tell you. They were having some difficulties, and I was here for a while, and I actually became their acting executive director, which was a great privilege, and I was here for a couple of years. I enjoyed that, and then Vern Medical had been the executive director as well, and then he became my thesis advisor for my PhD in his studies.
So, such a history we have
Yeah.
here tonight.
So it's wonderful to be here
That's
tonight.
super.
My one word, I actually thought intergenerational is what I thought.
Intergenerational.
Intergenerational.
Interesting, thank you.
I can follow the story here. Because I met her when she was working here, and we got married. And
Wow.
we went off to Bangkok, where we did for 15 years running Canada's human rights program in Southeast Asia. So my background, I guess I'd say, is international development. And my word was cross-cultural.
Cross-cultural. Thank you. So
Maybe it's
you,
2 words, but it's hyphenated.
you met her here in CICR?
It was an
I
interesting
did.
story. He called on the telephone, and
Ah.
we connected on the telephone.
My God, CICR, I mean, I should have heard this story. This should have gotten into the book. Awesome. So we're going to talk more about that.
What's that phone number?
Well done, well done.
We had a good conversation there.
What happened? This is awesome.
Not exactly. That's a good one.
Who's sitting here?
No,
No one?
no.
Okay, so
The
we have
book.
Okay, the book. Book, what's your word? Next.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Watson, and I live just beside the university in Brentwood Park. So I'm going to approach the occupation question with this answer, that I'm a father of 2 grown-up kids that grew up in this area. They used to ride in the field behind St. Paul's University over the Lady Evelyn School. And I have a wonderful partner called Carol, and we're in the midst of a very sad and long-lasting community dispute with a neighbor. So that's what motivated me to be here. And my word for today is forgiveness.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
That's
Awesome.
a great word.
It's your turn.
Well, everyone, my name is Mario, and I'm going to take a lead. I'm a lover of life, and I'm also a graphic designer. Really as a new friend, I don't measure things in time. I consider him a dear friend. We met in church, and when he approached me, and has given me the great honor and privilege to be the graphic designer for his upcoming book. And so I'm here primarily, of course, to support him. I'm also here to be able to also get further insights to help me do the best job that I can.
Thank you.
My word is peace.
Peace. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ike. I'm a student at St. Paul's, a graduate student, and I'm also a graduate of TPN. I'm very happy to be here. My one word is challenging, but not insurmountable. It's going to be challenging.
Challenging. Challenging. Challenge.
Yeah.
Challenging.
Challenge.
As in
Oh, challenge, sorry. Challenge.
Hi everyone, my name
is Alan Carter. I am retired, and my word is responsibility.
Responsibility.
So I'm partly deaf, and I'm not hearing.
Oh, no,
Responsibility.
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 Okay,
Yes.
Good,
We can
thank
just-
you.
When she didn't work with me, she always, talked about the deafness. And when she didn't want to do something, she said, "I can't hear you."
That's very smart. Next, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Angelique. I'm a wellness consultant. I don't know, it's my first time. It's an honor to be here and learn from you and everyone here. And I don't have any affiliation to University of St. Paul, but I did take TPN1 through CICR. Looking forward to complete the certification eventually. My word is intrigued.
Intrigue.
Intrigued.
Yes. Great words we are having tonight.
Oh dear, I'm gonna have to change my word. Hello, everyone. My name is Mo Royer, and or Royer. It's whatever one you want. But I've taken courses here, and I am so proud of being able to do that. It was a long time ago, and I was working for corrections at the time, Canada. And even back then, I said, we're going to do it in prisons. And I finally got the nerve to talk to the commissioner and the union president, and they agreed. And I did that for 10 years, and now I'm retired. And I want to revisit, and I want to surprise my friends in the front. Didn't tell them I was going to be here. Then he told me I have to leave. No. But what a great guy Ernie has been in wanting to help people. I've known him for many, many, many years, and he hasn't changed. I put him close to Moroni. I'm just kidding,
Well, we'll all be joining him one day.
Anyway, thank you very much. And my need, we need to be there for young people. We need to help each other out and love each other.
Perfect. You're next.
My name is Desmond. I am I'm an IT professional, currently freelance project manager, and I work for Ernie as well as both Belinda and Michael. So yeah, I'd say I met Ernie like back in 2000, I think about 2013 or 2012 around there. But where he basically saved me from a very money-grubbing paralegal when I had next to nothing. So found out the guy had no case, and like long story short, he found out the guy had no case, and I've known him ever since. So I'm helping him out with various aspects of, well, this, of course, as you can see, and as well as all of his websites and other projects that he's got going on. My word will probably be objectivity.
Objectivity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm director at CICR. Since I came to Canada, everything drove me to CICR, the community-based approach, the peace practitioners that form this community. I work on forgiveness, reconciliation. I found myself a home, and then I found a place to work, and being reconnected with founder generations, learning from people that have made many generations of peace building possible is a privilege. My word for tonight is service. Service in time. For decades.
Next, my lady.
Hi, I'm Joan. I've met Ernie through Jeanette, and been invited to some events, and I was invited to this and surprised him by showing up because I wasn't supposed to be here either. And I was going to change my word, but when we talk about the next generation, the first word that comes to mind is lost. Lost.
Lost. Thank you.
So I'm Dan Roseman. I've been involved with the Institute since 2005. I did the training around 2012 or 13, and I then got elected to the board. So I've been involved in the governance side for about 10 years, and I'm slowly stepping away from that. And I've been doing outreach for the Institute as well. And one of the things that led to was teaching a course here from time to time in canon law and conflict resolution. So, and that's something that hasn't been done anywhere else before. So that's, and my word is seeds, as in planting seeds. With an S.
With
one
an S. Oh,
plural.
Please.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you.
There we go.
My name's Andre. I'm retired as well, and I was hearing a few of those, so fortunate that way. My background really is in education. I was a high school principal for many years and have come to community of practices, so I really enjoyed those opportunities, and with the job it's allowed me to hone a few skills around that and continue to learn. My word would be compassion.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Kita. I have a marketing communications company, KS Communications, my specialty writing, publicity, and I'm also a healing guide. I met Ernie through his latest publishing company, Bacon, because I'm doing some work with them. So, nice to be here.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Your word is?
My word is innovation.
Innovation.
And I'm Wayne. I'm another retired person, retired physician actually. And background-wise, I've always been in Ottawa. I started off emergency medicine, some family medicine, and said I would never go to government. Then in the year 2000, a colleague of mine convinced me to join a government in Health Canada. So I went to government at Health Canada, and then to Veterans Affairs. After a few years, I then went to the RCMP and focused primarily on occupational health. And it's been a spectrum of interesting career, no regrets at all. Met Ernie probably within the last 6 months, roughly, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And certainly have noticed in Ernie an earnest desire, no pun intended, to really dedicate himself, has dedicated himself to conflict management and fairness. And that's really impressed me. He's a good person, a good man, and a good example. My word is necessary.
Benjamin Diaz, I'm a government worker. I got 1 year left to retire, electrical engineer, getting my software engineering. I got one more semester to do it. I met Ernie in the church, great man. I drive him every Sunday, so I'm his Uber. I love doing it. They call me now Ubi. And I'm grateful to be here, and my word is future.
And I'm Becky Pincock, and I am a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we met Ernie when we first got to Ottawa 6 months ago. And he was our first, and he's delightful. We really love him. And my word is harmony. Harmony.
My name is Richard. I'm also a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we are from Idaho, from the United States, and we're here for 18 months, and we'll be here until next year. And my word is togetherness.
Carmen Chaman. I know Ernie from the time I was doing the TPM here at San Paul University. That was in 2017. And ever since I've read his books, he wrote on that day, I remember. He made an impact. He had a lot of presenters. But what stood out to me was his sense of solidarity, and the way that he implemented the methodology in conflict resolution, and it was reflected in the book. I still have it. Although I, as a public servant, moving from one department to another, I didn't have enough years of practice in conflict resolution as I started in the then called Indian Affairs and Order Development. I still think of, and that's why I still think of coming back and participating in these sessions, which I appreciate very much. Because now that we can meet face to face, I find that this allows me the opportunity to demonstrate my solidarity with everyone who's present and everyone who's not. And there is so much going on right now in the world that I think that is one of the most important things that makes anyone related to conflict resolution. And that's why I'm here to say hi to Ernie and to say thank you.
And your word?
Yeah, I said it, solidarity.
Solidarity.
Yes, I am also a physician, and I'm a neurologist, and I do free consultations. No, but I knew only through the radio, because he had a program at one point, and was interviewing lots of people from all over the world. And I forgot the name of the station.
Machine Radio.
Machine Radio, that's it. And so he interviewed me first, and then I got interested in the radio sufficiently to apply to also have my own show. And I was then doing interviews with people from different parts of the world, from say 30 to 40 countries, including this lady here. And our association then grew because we were both in radio, but we also have other things in common because we're both from the Middle East. He's originally from Lebanon, and I'm from Yemen, and we have Arabic as a language between us. This conflict resolution project that he has become very famous. And in fact, I myself got an award from Toronto because of the people that I interviewed on my radio show. But I learned all that from them. So my word would be the word peace.
Peace. Thank you so much. Wow. Wow.
You teach those things we need to learn, right?
Okay, I have already introduced myself. I'm Esther. I'm operations manager here at CICR, and my word is fruits. Fruits. Fruit. Us, Donette, who is a member of the directors of CICR board. I'm so good to see you.
Being a delinquent tonight, so sorry.
Don't maybe take it off his folder.
Well, eventually we'll close the video. So, we were just introducing ourselves, Donette. Yes. We all just introduced ourselves, say what we do, and then the topic for today is conflict resolution for the next generation. And we just want one word that comes to your mind when you hear the topic. All the words are here. So those are the words that are shared.
We have a list.
Let's go around. Harmony is your word? Yes. Good. And you have to introduce yourself.
My apologies, everyone. I'm Donna Tucker, and I'm on the board here at CICR. Completed my TPN here in 2000. Yeah, I'm really excited. I love this place. The best measure.
Oh, thank you so much for all being a sparse. Thank you for the words you have contributed. And now we'll let the hero of the hour take the stage.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, welcome everybody, and for those that I do know, I really appreciate being here, and I love you all. I treasure every relationship, and making new friends today in the CICR, which is great, which is a big part of my life. So my name is Ernie, the former attorney. In Akwesasne, CICR was the conflict resolution consultant. For those that are old enough to remember, we had a civil war and the Oka crisis got worldwide attention, and we ended up being there. That was quite a story. And Gary Pottery was with us. He worked in the government. He passed away, but we learned a lot from the Mohawk people, and was very honored one night after they settled their civil war, which I think was a model for the world, how they did it. They had a surprise roast dinner, and they gave me an Indian name, which was a great honor. I really believe it saved my life. So I really honored their teachings, and that was a big reason I picked this topic about their teachings of the next 7 generations. So my word is humility. I've learned how to brag about my humility. That's a big requirement. So I had the whole idea, and I talked to Jenna about setting something up, but then I realized on the news that today's the first day of the state funeral for Brian Mulroney, Prime Minister. And it made me just think back about a lot of things about Brian Mulroney. And what I'd like to do is not deviate, but enhance this presentation by starting with him first, if you don't mind. Just take a moment of silence for spirit. He's in the heaven. My friend would say he's on the board of directors of heaven. But we can just take a moment to think about what he did for conflict resolution, which I will explain in a minute. So in 1985, I left the lucrative law practice because I wanted to see what Jesus meant by mediation. The whole idea of the legal system and all the money, and didn't make sense. And thanks to my beautiful wife Mary, she blessed that journey and went with it. So she's with me every day. And then in terms of going around the world and learning something which we never learned in law school, I met all these people around the world, great thinkers, great peacemakers, drawing on the history of people, and then we were wondering what to do. So we set up the Dispute Resolution Center of Ottawa Carleton in 1986. And it did 12 years, and we diverted 2,000 cases out of the criminal court system for minor offenses. It changed people's lives. It was fantastic. But they cut the funding. Why they cut the funding? There's people that don't like too many solutions, right? So they say QE bono, follow the money, right? Mm-hmm. So then we thought, well, we were learning from Harvard University. A lot of people there were helping us. But there was no equivalent to Harvard in Canada. So we came up with this idea of the Canadian Institute for Conflict Resolution. There wasn't one. Some people said, who do you think you are? I said, well, we're just people trying to make a difference. And so we started to think about setting up this Canadian Institute for Conflict Resolution. We got different universities involved, Carleton, Ottawa U, Algonquin College, other universities. And there was a movement around, okay, we should set one up in Canada. Okay. Then, how do we get support for that? So we got a lot of support, but I realized, I'm apolitical, but I realized you need government support, not necessarily the money, but opened some doors and everything. And at that time, in 1988, Brian Mulroney was Prime Minister, he got re-elected, and it was unbelievable what his office did for us. So we set up the CICR in 1988, and almost every day or every second day, I was calling the Prime Minister's office to ask about this, ask about that. And for some reason, we got through. Normally when you call the government, they send you to a department, you hear from them in 6 months. But every day we got an answer. It was really unbelievable. And I didn't understand that. Many years later, which is not a story I've told very often, but the sculpture for the sculpture Justice ? Which took 5 years to design, he said, "Really, I got a special guest coming for dinner tonight." And this woman came in, and she said she was the first receptionist for the Prime Minister's office. She said, the way the government works, when they get a call, it's got 7 levels. The 7th level is, it goes to, in the atmosphere, sometime you might hear from them, and it keeps going to 6th, 5th, gets closer, and then the first level has to be approved by the cabinet and the Prime Minister. It's the one they need to deal with that day. They met twice a day. That's what they said. And she said, "We put you on that list of one." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because everybody else was complaining, and you guys there, you're just ordinary people trying to make this country a better place." I said, "Well, that's phenomenal." And he gave that endorsement to that. So it was like that phrase, ordinary people doing extraordinary things in extraordinary ways. And that's what we were doing. We were just following, for me it was following a faith, and everyone had their own inspiration. It was very spiritual, and it was very real. And as we moved along, we were looking for what to do as a first project. Well, in 1985, I had met a man named Emil Cannon. He was with a multi-millionaire family from in Los Angeles, and he dropped everything to find out about justice. And he was quite a believer, but he just couldn't believe the world was in the shape it was in. I never met him before. So that was in 1985, he went to a Lebanese fellow and said, "Look, I'm looking for a lawyer that will help me set up a nonprofit organization, but it's got to be pro bono. And I want to do some peacemaking work." And this Lebanese guy said, "Geez, I know the lawyer for you." So Neil and I met, and it was like unbelievable. He passed away. He went to the board of directors of Heaven. He's the one I learned that phrase from in 2016. But we set up a group called My World, which is going to be a key part of what trying to have a vision about what we can do all two together for the next generations. So we set up My World in 1985, and we did some things. And the motto is, children helping other children pick up the pieces. It was a phenomenal concept. And at that time, I'm of Lebanese descent. I was born here. But you know, the Civil War went on from 1975 to 1990. But in 1986, 87, it was really bad. You know, orphanages were being blown up, schools. So he had this idea that to go to Lebanon and have the children there, the students, pick up the rubble from the schools and their homes, and take a piece of rubble and put it in a plastic bag with a note to other children in the world. Can you help us? It was very moving. So, but how do you get into Lebanon? You couldn't get into Lebanon. It turns out that the executive to the Prime Minister was a classmate of mine, and they made a special arrangement for Emil to go to Lebanon. He came back with all this rubble. And we went to all the students in Ottawa, but they took the rubble and they sold them for $1 each. And with the money that was collected, it went back to Lebanon to rebuild schools and orphanages. Children helping other children pick up the pieces through a process. And we learned a lot from them. I thought, you know, we should make that our priority. So we came up with this idea of mediation in a school system, which was not happening. It's never happened before. So we did asked all the schools, and we got one, I remember Charlotte Lemieux, the director of education, called me. She says, "Ernie, I got good news and bad news." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Well, the bad news is only one person, one principal said they would take on this project." The good news to me was, from an acorn to an oak tree grow, all you need is one person. So we met them, and Ivan Roy was the vice president, and they set up Canada's first high school mediation program. And it's an incredible story, which I don't have time to tell now what it's written about, but that experience with that mediation really solidified the value of this for the next generations, because they teach us too. Now, one of the things I remembered about active listening, you know, we all know about active listening, and in that situation, there was a group of students from one high school coming to Woodruff. There were 6 on each side. They were going to have a little bit of a gang warfare. Nobody knew what it was about. So Ivan Roy, the vice principal, said, "You're going to have to suspend them, you're going to have to call the police." But we had done the mediation setup. So they said, "Let's try mediation." So the police agreed, the school agreed, the principal really wanted it. So they did the mediation, got the 2 students involved to find out what's going on. Well, it turns out they're in high school, but they both had, like this little girl from elementary school, they both had an affection for this girl. So they were trying to see who should be the boyfriend, one or the other. So they're talking together with the mediator, and he said something on CBC television, I'll never forget. They said, "Well, what was it that you learned in mediation that helped this?" He said, "Well, they taught us about active listening." Now, you know all about active listening. When you're talking to somebody, you're quiet, but you're not listening, and you're thinking about what you're going to say. So they were taught to say, ask the other person what they just said. So he was on TV, he said, "We did that." He said, "Repeat what that person just said." And he did. He said, I said, "I didn't say that." The whole problem was not listening to each other. It turned out that they settled their differences, they became good friends, and another incentive for me about this topic is that I met one of those students not long ago, like decades later. He remembered. He said, "Ernie, what I learned at Woodruff High School 30 years ago helped me with my business, my family, myself, my job, everything." So there was a permanent life skill. He said, "Boy, that's a phenomenal feedback about all that." And we carried on. And then that movement about schools around the world started to grow, but it's sort of not growing as much, and I'm going to come up with an idea of a vision for the world, which is essentially we should encourage every city in the world to do what we did here, set up a conflict resolution day, and Brian Mulroney, with Ray Natish was the Minister of Justice. He became the Governor General. He supported this school project. It became so successful that we had a whole day, Conflict Resolution Day of Ottawa Carleton. Thank you for bringing what's right here. It's a 66-page book. It was every level of society spoke. It was fantastic. And Prime Minister Brian Mulroney sent us an endorsement, and he actually signed it. I don't know where the original is. And we then got something else done that never had been done. At that time, there were still 11 municipalities in Ottawa Carleton and a regional chair. All of them signed a document, which is in the book, on a declaration of conflict resolution for the next generations. So everyone was rallying around this topic. And that stayed with me. When Emile Cannon passed away in 2016, I realized you got to carry on this message. So I learned a long time ago, when you're making a presentation, like I'm doing now, you gotta figure out, to make sure people know what your point is. Now, I learned a lesson back in the 1990s. They had the world's first international mediation conference in the United States. All the nations, Western nations, were invited to send someone to speak for their country. For some reason, I ended up speaking for Canada. It was a great honor. The dean of the law school was the MC. So I had 10 or 15 minutes, and it was quite an honor. And I remember when it was finished with about 1,000 people, I remember walking down the aisle and this woman, Linda, you look like her. This woman says, Mr. Tannis, I'm a PhD student at George University in the States, the first PhD program in conflict resolution.
Georgetown?
Georgetown. Thank
Yes.
you. And she said, look, I took 12 pages of notes. Oh, wow. Why ego? She took 12 pages of notes. She's a PhD student. She said, I have a question. I said, sure. She said, what was your point? My point is, we should collectively rally around the next generations to guide us. And to do that, I have a thing called TBN. You might remember, to look at the world from a telescope, binoculars, and a microscope. It's the best way to look at everything. So from the telescope, what is the big theme? What is the big picture? As Professor Fisher said, a great Canadian psychologist who passed away too, one of the directors, he said, before you talk about an issue, talk about how you're going to talk about an issue. So simple, but it was a breakthrough, those kind of things. So in Akwesasne, there are 18 stakeholders, like in Lebanon, should remember those who read about it, there was killings, police forces, New York State, Ontario, Quebec, the US government, Canadian government, TOPA, it was all over the world. And they said at the government level, they were looking for the reconstruction of the Mohawk territory of Akwesasne. So they put in 25 million, but they allocated 5% for conflict resolution, and then they looked for someone to be the conflict resolution consultant. CICR became that consultant to the dismay of many. But we did, and the government officials, I remember being in a room with all these government officials, military police, they're not going to get their act together. You know, what's going to keep them together? I said, I don't know, we're going to ask them. Well, there's no hope. You know, behind the scenes, some people didn't want them to get their act together. Just another step towards making native territories municipalities. Anyway, I said, look, we're just going to go in and listen to them. So Jerry and I went 2 weeks and heard everybody out. I remember the Grand Chief, Mike Mitchell. He said, how much are you going to charge? We're a charity. I said, I don't know. Why don't we just go in and talk and we'll see what we hear. But what we heard from everybody, no matter how much they were shooting, killing, fighting, they all said one thing. What is the common ground? That's the key. The common ground was the well-being of the next 7 generations. I never heard that before. That you can never live biologically to see the 7th generation. If that common ground brought them together. And from that, they created a model, which I think is a model for the world. So on the binoculars level, we started talking to other people, including in Hollywood, who make movies and TV. So we went down, a few of us, and talked about putting these themes in for children's shows. And all of a sudden, people started thinking and writing differently because they were thinking of the next generation. Well, that actually helps the existing generation in order to do the right thing for the well-being of everybody. And when I started looking and learning about this, I said, let's look at some of the big disputes in the world, like the Camp David Accords with Anwar Sadat from Egypt in 78, Menachem Begin from Israel, very famous with President Carter. One of the sessions, President Carter gave a talk, and I remember listening to something, he said something that really reinforced this idea. He said it came to a time when the Israeli and the Egyptian delegations told their leaders there's no hope, just let's go back to the war. And President Carter said, and I don't know if he really wrote about this in his book. If you've heard it before, let me know where you read it, but I never read this before. But he told us that he brought pictures of his children and grandchildren into the room before they were leaving to go back to war. And he showed them the pictures, and then he said to them, can you share pictures of each other's children and grandchildren with each other? These two leaders. And they did. So they went against the advice of their military people, and they settled. Of course, you know, Anwar Sadat assassinated. But just at that level, bringing home to them, we were going to teach those children, all your children, to keep killing each other. So that was very inspiring. I said, okay, on a binoculars level, how do you move things along? So part of what the Prime Minister did was he helped the CICR get invited to the 1990 All-Party Justice Committee of the Ontario government about what to do about the ADR phenomenon. So I was honored to be there, but they said, how does this stuff work? How do you go from an idea to implementation? So I didn't know, so I sort of wrote things down. So I said, it starts with a pow. If an idea hits you and you go, wow, pow, that really makes me feel good, right? So when you feel pow, then you talk to somebody and you share your idea. And they go, wow, what a great idea. Okay, they go, pow, wow. And then the next question is, how do you do it? How? So we go, now, pow, wow, how? Well, then you have to figure out how. When do you do it? We got to do it now. Now you're into pow, wow, how now. But the next thing in this development of ideas is history is full of ideas. Even cars and everything comes from an idea. The last thing is a vow. You got to vow to stay with it. And that's what I love about what we're all doing. We are vowing to stay with this intention and commitment to make sure that the next generations have a more peaceful way to live. So, how, wow, how, now, vow. And then at the end, you take a bow. You told me that, take a bow. But I think we bow to the teaching that we follow. We don't bow to each other, to ourselves. Now, on the microscope level, there were some things that struck me as a lawyer. So there's a problem. The first thing that you're taught is think of what the law is. Then you think about, and you're trying to think, okay, how can justice be served for my client? And then what values apply? Well, it's all backwards. I realize that because the court has no time to listen to values. It's not part of their repertoire. So I said, we've got to turn it around. We have to say, what are your values? How do they guide justice for everyone? And what law applies and doesn't need to apply? So I said, this is, like young people, they're always looking at the law and who's going to win-lose. But win-lose leads to lose-lose. You got to try to get win-win. So the idea was to move it around, and that changed a lot. Talk about values first. And when Judge Frank Evans from the Court of Appeal of Texas was a great believer in working for the children. We met him, he came to Canada in 1990. The CICR co-hosted every year. It was at a national conference in the United States and in Canada. So we co-hosted the one in Canada in 1990. And Judge Frank Evans came up and he asked at a conference about how would you describe, how do you make a difference if just one person? So I said, well, how about a ripple becomes a wave that washes away unresolved conflict from the shores of injustice. And we talked about that, and he left the bench, Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal of Texas, and he dedicated his whole life to doing mediation, negotiation, life skills for the next generations. All these people were all very inspiring to carry this comment on. So there's one mediation that we're going to do an exercise on, which I haven't written about it, but as Keena knows now, this could be in the next book. There's a real mediation. I'm going to tell you the mediation, then I'm gonna ask you a question. Who else is affected by this conflict? You're all gonna take a shot at saying, okay, who else is affected? So here's the quick story. Husband and wife, 4 kids. She inherits $150,000 from her father's estate in Australia. Now, under the law, if you inherit money in family law, it belongs to you, it doesn't belong to your spouse and you. Thanks for coming, kid. Unless you mix it in with your joint assets. So the question is the money mixed in with the joint assets? So it's $150,000 at stake, 2 lawyers. The wife's lawyer gave her an opinion that the money belonged only to her, and his lawyer gave him an opinion that the money belonged to both of them. Same evidence, same law, 2 opinions. So I said to them in the mediation, well, if you change lawyers, would you get a different opinion? And they started to laugh. I said, are your lawyers guaranteeing you the outcome? No. So you're going to invest $15,000 each on a motion to see who's going to get the money. And is that the way you want to do this? So then I said, before you make that decision, I'm going to ask you who else is affected by this conflict. Before we get to that, I'm going to finish with one story, short story. In Akwesasne, back to children, was with 2 grandchildren of the woman in Akwesasne, who was the director of the mediation center, Jolene Adams. She passed away in 2022. And her grandchildren were with me at the store. The conflict was over. There's 2 of them in this new bakery. And we walked in the bakery shop, and there was a dozen oatmeal cookies, a dozen chocolate chip cookies for $1. And they both wanted different cookies. I said, and I thought, I was like standing up, there's a room of people. I said, this is a chance for me to show how you resolve an issue. Like, this is a deadlock, right? This is classic. So I said, I have an idea. I said, can you give me 6 of one type of cookie, 6 of the other? And for the same $1, they both get what they want. I was so proud of myself. I just laughed. So they said, children, what did you learn from that? They said, you learned you're cheap. Always keep a sense of humor. So I want you to pretend you're in this mediation, whether you're the husband or wife. The lawyer's giving you a different opinion, and you're going to decide what to do. So I asked the question, before you decide what to do, whether to share the money or just you keep it, who else is affected by this conflict? And they started answering that question. So I'm going to ask you that, and every time you mention who's going to be affected, Jeanette's going to write it. Right? Here, why don't you write down this? Jeanette, leave that there. Okay, you're going to start with 2 dots. So what do we do is say, okay, this is the husband and wife, 2 dots. So I said, who else is affected by this conflict? Children, number 1, thank you, right on. Children, so it's not a circle. Who else? The lawyers. The lawyers.
Your friends.
Who?
Your friends.
The friends?
Grandchildren?
Grandchildren. Grandchildren. What? Grandparents.
Siblings.
Siblings, exactly. Who else is affected?
Future generations.
Future generations. we were going to hold that to last because they didn't give that answer. So you came up with that. So yeah, the future generations. Because one of them is going to get remarried, so they asked their opinion, right? Who else is affected by conflict? Any conflict?
The community.
The community as a whole?
What was that last one?
Community. Let's fill that chart up. Who else? Think in life who you interact with.
The lawyers' wives or husbands. The lawyers, you know.
Yeah, well,
They're both like.
Yeah, we have a lawyer.
Not their wives.
Their spouses.
Oh, the spouses are the lawyers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. I didn't Okay, that's a new one. Spouses of lawyers. But yeah, they're gonna say, how come you're getting? They're gonna say, how are you gonna, why do you get them to settle, we're gonna lose $15,000? In fact, this poor woman, she comes in, she says, I thought about it, I talked to my
Friend.
and who else do people do for advice?
Relatives.
Relatives? Who else?
Priest.
Priest, yes. Spiritual advisor, that's what she meant. And so she said, I'm gonna go along with this idea, splitting it, we've got too many other things at stake. He called her stupid. That was one of the few times I got really pissed off. As the mediator, I said, he called you stupid? So I called him up. I said, you know, you can't be reported for the law study for this. He said, what are you doing getting them to have to give up on this and give up on that? I said, do me a favor, you guarantee you're in writing that you're gonna win for her, and then go to court. He said, it's not the way it works. He said, that's why I left the system. I want to try to help people through it. So, I can't believe he said that. I wanted to report him, but the law said he don't want to take complaints about that stuff. Yeah, who else? We got 3 more lines here.
What about future couples going to be seen in case there's a precedent set?
Yes, yeah, exactly. The precedent for the future, for other couples in the same boat. Now, in this regard, there was a senior lawyer at a major firm in Canada, Alan Reid. He gave me a 100-page document because all the lawyers across Canada in this firm wanted to know the answer to the question, how do you share an inheritance? They cited 100 court cases. You know what the conclusion of the article was? Every case is decided on its own merits, right? So you can't, it depends who walks into your office first, right? Oh, we got 2 more rows left.
The rest of the world.
That's what she said at the end. She said, I'll never forget, she said, the whole world is affected by what we decide. But we can end with that, that's what she said. You got the future relationship, so that's gonna be in my next book. But that was a very powerful statement about the importance of keeping the children in mind. Yes, that's future relationships. Oh, I think I'm gonna end with this role of the media. If you remember, back in 1988, there was a fight in a school in Halifax, black kids and white kids. It got national attention, front page news. These 2 kids, two gangs fought. The same week, that fight was going to happen at Woodruff. And Ivan Roy, the vice principal, was so moved by this, he retired early and dedicated the rest of his life to doing this across the world. In fact, he gave me a document last week. The UN has been, I didn't know this, the UN started 5 years ago. They're doing a worldwide study on the empathy and sensitivities of children around the world, which is perfectly coincides with this idea of doing conflict resolution. And they're doing an up-to-date report. So they settled in Woodruff, and Halifax got all the news. So I called all the media outlets that did this, national news, TV, newspaper, everything. I said, you know, here's a story in Ottawa where the students resolved something. Why don't you put that in? It's not newsworthy. You know, it leads. News is supposed to be northeast, west, south. It was very, I remember as my sister's apartment. She's the one that edited that book on conflict resolution day. And I remember crying in her office, in her apartment. I couldn't believe it. And the young kids said, well, what does that mean, Mr. Tannis? We don't get any, like, to get attention, we've got to do something wrong. I said, you know what? When what you're doing is intelligent and long-lasting, it's hard to report. Oh, they said, I like that. What we're doing is intelligent and long-lasting. I said, yeah, you should be glad you're not in English, because they don't know how to report it. It's the only thing I can think of. But they were okay. They, at the celebration, one of them said, and all the parents were there and the grandparents, and at the celebration of what they accomplished with theater, they said, we really feel good. I said, well, like I said earlier, we teach those things we need to learn. I think the children will teach us. So I'm just proposing, we have the precedents, we have the knowledge, we have hierarchies in this world about who wants to control the money, and warfare is a big business, and there's theological mediation. People want to have the Armageddon. There's a lot of conflict, but at the end of the day, the vast majority of people want peace. So my idea is that we should encourage every city in the world to adapt to their culture, to their language, to their history, peacemaking skills to the next generation. I believe that's so doable. I believe 80% of the population will buy into it, and there's that writer said that who can think that anybody can make a difference in this world to change anything? And she wrote, the only time things get changed in the world is by ordinary people gathering together for a common cause, for the well-being of the next generation. So I think that we should really support this idea. I think it's very doable, and it should get a lot of support, and that is the true wealth that we have. Well, thank you for listening. It went a bit longer than I thought. Thank you very much. We've got time if you want to have somebody want to say anything, or add anything, or challenge anything.
My understanding is that the native people don't believe that they inherit the parents, but rather that they borrow from their children.
Ancestors and the children.
Imagine if we all had that mindset.
Yeah. I think we inherently do. I think, Satan does a good job of distracting us, or whoever does it, or whatever happens. I think most of humanity has that. I don't think we should give up hope on humanity.
A couple of times a few years ago, well, 2 years ago, after Russia invaded Ukraine, I listened in on a couple of webinars from the Harvard program on negotiation. And I was flabbergasted. Like, they already, 2 weeks after the fighting started, they already had the solutions. And they come in with this mindset, like, you just have to provide a golden bridge so Putin will be able to withdraw. You have to save his face. There was no thinking really about Ukrainian needs. And then a couple weeks later, they had a presentation by someone at Oxford, but they were offering him a job to come to Harvard. And he was pointing out, Harvard's really very good at setting forward, its model. It communicates its model. It's got multiple books out there, marketing its model. It's what it teaches everybody. But we don't really do very well with the human skills. And so my question is, how do we propagate the human skills more effectively?
What do you want to talk about that?
I do. I think that my background's in both psychology and in conflict resolution and peace building. And my feeling was always that the thing that makes us human is our feelings, the way we relate to people, and that if we ignore that in a conflict, we ignore a very huge part of what actually generates the conflict, keeps feeding the conflict, and not validating those things, I think also is extremely damaging. And it's not just damaging in the conflict, it's damaging in the post-conflict as well. And I think we're taught so many things, but we're not taught how to manage ourselves, manage our emotions, just talk about them, the life skills that you're talking about. It's really a life skill. And without that, I think it generates conflict on a daily basis, and it becomes a snowball effect. It becomes a multiplier. So I think it's critical that these skills are taught to the next generation, but not just to the next generation, to all of us.
Yes.
That's why my word was intergenerational. I think we all have this lifelong learning, right? And we're all in silos. That living in Asia, what I noticed is that it's not as siloed. There is a cross-fertilization of the generations. And here I often see older people, they become shadows, basically. They disappear from society. And I think that's even more so today, as we have a gulf of, technology. It's almost like we've become illiterate, in a sense. Anyway, I have a lot of things to say about this, but I just wanted to get the ball rolling.
You talked about the silos, it made me think in
Yeah.
Hollywood, one of the writers said, talking about the Star of Truth, they've probably heard this, the Star of Truth burst to billions of pieces all over the world, and everybody picked up the piece and said, I have the truth, I have the truth. But you have to all come together for the one truth. And that really struck me. And the other thing, in terms of promoting this idea, in honor of Emil Cannon in 2016, when he passed away, we created the Peace with Justice Award, which he really, it was a big belief of his. And it's got to be peace with justice. Peace without justice is no peace at all. So it's got to be peace with justice. And the first recipient was Dr. Ed Napke. He was a brilliant medical scientist. He passed away last year. He created an adverse drug reaction, which was ADR. So when I met him, we were both doing ADR. I was doing alternative dispute resolution. He was doing adverse drug reaction. Dr. Napke, he was one of the first people that the International Medical Scientific Community honored. So he got that award. And then a year later, Ambassador John McDonnell, who was the ambassador of the United States at all peace conferences for 40 years, I got to meet him through a lot of things, and he wrote the foreword to the book, and I learned so much from him. And I was able to go down to Washington, and he received the reward. And then in 2022, the executive director of Akwesasne, the Mohawk people liked the idea, so she got the award posthumously. So this year, the award is going on August 12th to the Conflict Resolution Network in Australia with Helena Cornelius on behalf of her mother. And that's on August 12th, which is International Youth Day of the UN. So what we're going to try to do with that is promote this idea of all the cities in the world picking up on this idea and doing something in their own communities. And hopefully this will bring us some awareness. But anybody can think of other ideas to promote it.
You can go ahead.
Oh, no, I just have, when I was trying to find my phone, I must have left it in my coat. I was just trying to read again what this was all about. And for me, it was really, how do we get our generation, to be more understanding of all the other generations. And what comes to mind with me is, and I just get very surprised, is how even when I'm walking, the younger kids, they walk with their phones. And, a few times I've, even asked questions. I said, excuse me, where's this building? And they can't hear because, they have these iPods in there. And so this is where I thought there was a big gap. And I sort of thought we're going to touch on that too, because how do, most of us are similar background, well, similar age or whatever, close. I'm not going to say, we're the same age, but close enough. And even I've seen my granddaughter, and she's already watching, the little, on the iPad and whatever. And so we have to use a different communication skill, in a way that we touch them, but a lot of them are closed in to this technology, and the AI, and we're being brainwashed too on the television, like about AI things, and so that was, anyway, so I just thought, I'm sitting here thinking, we haven't really crossed, that, because, and it starts in the home, really. I know everything I think, as a parent, I was brought up a certain way, and then I said, I want it different, I wanted my daughter to, I want to have a better relationship, with my daughter and my granddaughter. And so it came from me, but then, with a lot of other people, maybe not, if you're not interested, you're not interested, but how do you touch that population? How do you get them interested?
So in the mediation, I always say to the parents, how are your children going to learn about problem solving? It's going to just see how you handle this. Can you co-parent and everything else? There was so in the UN study, this study been going on for years, one of the things we all know, 80% of communication is not verbal. It's your intonation of your voice, your facial expressions, your body language, and that's being lost. Everything's on technology and email and text, and it's dehumanized. So that's a big part of what this study, I think with this study, it's like a plug in the socket. You put the study with these practical experiences, it's electrifying to join them. So I'm hoping that we can connect with the UN on that. But I think that's a good point. The problem is it's all dehumanized now. And they have to, so part of the idea is to get back to human communication skills.
Mike, I'd like to raise something if I may. Some of you know that I was in politics at one point in my life, and I enjoyed it. I remember as well, we had a parliamentary committee studying prisons by all major political parties federally. The big thing that happened there is that they worked together. They understood the difficulties that everybody was going through in the prison. And they talked about it. And they trusted one another. And they came out with a unanimous report. We had 2 of those political committees. And both of them did the same thing. We, as people, I find, the biggest one gift that I always felt was raised and born here. So were my parents and my grandparents and so on. To have people in this country who have come from another place, another country, what we could learn from them, what we could do in this country together, and loving one another, and how can we do that? Our kids, if we're talking about the future, are going through very, very difficult times at this point in their life. I mean, when you see the kids falling off a cliff, or killed, or raped, and you go on and on. We could be there for one another if we just gave us the time and learn and listen. You're right, Ernie, we don't listen at times. This country wouldn't be what it is today if it hadn't been for people who came to this country. And we got to work more on that together.
Can you share a bit about the prison mediation experience? Just to maybe give a couple of examples, because it did work out well for 10 years. It was mediation between prisoners and between the guards and the upper management, but not between the prisoners and the guards.
Yes, there were.
Oh, there were?
Yes. Some people in the establishment didn't think it would work. Let's take an example very quickly. 2 correctional officers are working 9-hour shifts. They go home after a riot, and they have problems going back home, take a few more drinks, and then has an argument with those who he lives with, his wife or her husband, and so on. What does that person do? Comes back to the institution and gets involved again in something else. On the side of inmates or offenders, I always shook hands with them when I met them. And they say, we can't do that. They won't allow us to do that. What's this? I know there's a security side to it. If you want a no riot day, peace in the institution, and we can have peace in the world, stop fighting with one another. Stop disrespecting one another. Communicate with one another. And don't play on the role of you're no good. I was very fortunate. Yes, I did all the prisons in Kingston, all the federal prisons. But it gave me it's like your belief in what you said at the beginning of the evening. You got something in your mind, you want to deal with it. That's exactly the way I felt when I got to talk to the commissioner and the union. Had to be both to work with me. Have this mediation, and it worked. And I can go on and on and on, and I'm not going to do that.
So there is a wording, remember this one intervention, I'll never forget this, was National Department of Canada, they made a group, Canada, they were gonna shut down the department, and they did the mediation, and the government, there's 5 people on each team, and the government side said, okay, tell the Native mediation team that we're ready to have another meeting. And I said, okay, and I went to the other side, I was quite excited, and nobody thought this could get settled. And then I went to the other side and I said, oh, the government, I got good news, the government said they're gonna have another meeting. And the women are take a leadership role of the 5, she said, we're not gonna have another meeting. I'll remember how devastated I felt. We're not gonna have another meeting, how are we gonna carry on? And tell them we're not gonna have another meeting. So as I was doing shuttle diplomacy between the Native group and the government side, and the government side, there were 2 Native people, one did a degree at Harvard, they said, what did I learn in Akwesasne? I would say, what did I learn in Akwesasne? Oh, Ernie, be careful. The English words sometimes in Mohawk or other languages, it means a different thing. Mm-hmm. You should ask, what do you mean by that? So just before I made the mistake of knocking on the door and said they're not gonna have another meeting, I went back to the Native group and I said to her, what do you mean you're not gonna have another meeting? How are we gonna carry on? She said, the white man, they go from meeting to meeting to meeting. We have one meeting under many moons. It was the most brilliant answer I had heard in a long time. It's just a consistent thing, and make sure you understand each other. And I feel before we leave, there's a Native leader, Tom Porter. He's still around. He spent his whole life in the Mohawk Valley, teaching the next generation Mohawk with the Peacemaker Plateau. Reverend John Miracle just passed away, and he was able to teach the Native people you can still keep your peacemaking tools in your long hills and still believe in Jesus. But I remember, I said, well, Tom, how would you sum it up? And he said, which I quote often, he said, each culture is like a flower, and one day the world should be a beautiful bouquet. So we did a beautiful drawing on that. And that is a list of drawings. But I think drawings, and one of the best communication skills is silence.
I mean, there was a hand over there.
Yeah, it's just, so my background, Ernie, you've used a couple of kind of examples relating to schools, which is my background as a high school principal for 20 years. So saw a lot of conflict, and I guess under the umbrella of hope, what I've seen over that time frame is a real shift in, I guess, how we've handled conflict in schools. I don't know if you've seen that over time, and that shift is moving away from more consequence suspension into restorative type practices. And so I know in my last school, we spent a lot of time with staff working on training around restorative practices, so that it would actually be pervasive as a culture within the classroom itself. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about kind of the next generation, I guess again under hope, there are things that are happening, I think, in schools that are trying to promote more of the listening, more of the understanding different points of view, sitting down together, as opposed to simply, here's the consequence, you gotta step out of school. Because our frame of mind was, kids come back into school, they see each other, and that relationship is still fractured. So how can we nurture that and try to bring it together?
That's the right nurture.
So I guess that's kind of a message I wanted to share here, is that there is lots of hope, even though the media, as you point out, will focus on the negative, but there are many wonderful things that kids are doing in schools to promote peace, to promote social justice. And of course, we don't hear about those, right? But there really is a lot of positive things happening. And I guess I just wanted to share that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Just along those lines,
some other stuff.
just along those same lines, one of my comments was going to be, where do we go from here? And you had mentioned earlier that years ago, there was a day set aside where schools would focus on the whole day, have that as their theme. I don't know if that currently exists. It's great to have that on an ongoing basis, but is it happening in Ottawa, where each school, public board, Catholic board, and universities, if they were to even dedicate one day and have that focus, they're the up and coming generation.
Right.
And it could add to this ongoing program of conflict resolution and training, and that's where the future
Yes.
would benefit.
With this UN study, Ottawa is the only city that's participating in it. It's been a few years, but we're trying to get them to do that. When you mentioned restorative, I can end it quickly. I was asked to speak to all these prison guards at a day-long conference, and they wanted to hear about restorative justice, the head guy. So he picks me up in the hotel. He said, I gotta warn you, there's prison guards, there's about 120 of them here. They're not happy with this subject. I said, why? He said, well, if restorative justice worked, there'll be less prisoners. Great. He said, I hope you can find a way to break through that. But why didn't you do it? I said, okay, thanks for telling me now. So I got up and I looked at all these dry faces. I went and talked to them all before. I said, I want to let you know something. If you don't pay attention to restorative justice and alternative dispute resolution, you may lose your jobs. Oh, they all perked up. I don't know if they really believe they would, but it's so true that the fear of losing something, but I think the idea, that's the idea, is to try to get back to doing that around. I think we could do it everywhere around the world.
Yeah, but I think your comment too about an acorn and an oak tree,
Yeah.
very relevant.
Yes, it is.
And sometimes we have this broad vision, and that's right, but our sphere of influence is more local. It's between me and friends and us as a community in Ottawa, and then building that, and that will spread.
Exactly.
So I think, locally there.
Yes, that's a ripple way good. We might, where's my boss? Oh, there you go. Is it possible to just go around the room and ask everybody to say one word about how you feel about this discussion?
Yes.
It's just an idea.
Yeah, that's a
You want to do that? Mark the words down. If you don't mind.
So we'll just go around very briefly, say one word.
One word about how you feel about this discussion.
Yes. So you can start. Oh, maybe we start with that second. Okay. So you can start.
Okay, well, in spite of my age, 80 plus, I've learned something from all this. Thank you.
Did you hear that tonight? Did you hear that?
So that would be
Learn.
Learn. Yes.
Learn.
I feel hopeful based on what we've heard. Hopeful.
I like the diagram on the other page of the ripple effect.
Yeah. The ripple effect.
Ripple.
The ripple effect.
Ripples.
Ripple becomes a wave.
Yeah.
Ripple wave. Yeah, so it should do a diagram. Sister.
I like the thought that we come together as one, unity.
Unity.
Do I have to choose a new word? I'd say hopeful too, but hopeful. Just put two markers.
Hopeful. Check out hopeful,
Hopeful 2.0.
Yeah.
My word is kids, because I think we have a great deal to learn from kids. So,
That's great.
Agreed.
It's a start. So we need to do more of this. So it's a start.
A start.
A start. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to think about it, so.
It's always a privilege of seeing how Ernie responds to any issue that he's thrown out. 35 years ago or tomorrow, with an active presence and finding what can we do differently, how can we respond to that, innovate or just trust who we are and what we do. And I would say responsiveness. From that reflective approach that you have, that you're responsive to any need. You're part, but you have that presence of responsive, and I bring that to what you inspire in others, and that was also rippled in the Institute. How do we respond to this new idea or challenge creatively with the bunch of people that we are here now? Thank you.
Well, for me, a couple of things that Ernie said was regarding that how the lawyers responded when they were not able to make money off of something. The guards were not able to be happy when they had less prisoners because they don't have anything to make money off of. Kind of comes back to an old joke that I heard about. It's and no offense to anyone who's in these fields, I know someone in these fields. A doctor never wishes that you're healthy. A lawyer never wishes that you're never in trouble. An electrician always hopes that your power's out. A plumber always hopes that you got a leak, but only a thief wishes you prosperity. And I think it's seeing about what people's motives are when they actually do something. So motives would be a good one.
There's a famous picture which I carried in my office for two farmers fighting over a cow. One farmer was pulling the head, one farmer was pulling the tail, and right in the middle there's two lawyers milking it.
I find believing each other. When I hear of something or see something on television about how we're treating women, how we're treating children, how we're not listening to one another, it's sad. What's education? Thank goodness we do have people who give us education. But how can we use that in society?
Educate.
I have lots of words buzzing in my head, but I'll stick to curiosity. I think if we stay curious, I think conflicts evolve, generations evolve, and just to stay curious.
Curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity.
Same word.
Yeah, so seeing the way things are going down to schools, like my brother here said, I see lights.
Lights?
Light.
Light.
It's a light at the end of the tunnel, it's not a train coming the other way.
My first word was going to be enlightenment. Then I
Be what?
Enlightenment.
Enlightenment, okay.
And then I was inspired to change it to vision.
Vision.
But I've gone up with a new one.
Okay.
My new word is action.
Action.
And the reason why is because I'm sure we can all agree none of this means anything unless it's put into action.
Action.
We have to act.
My word is love. And
If I just make presence in itself is an action.
And so I mentioned, so the dispute I mentioned, it's been 28 years. It started with the father and now it's going with the son. And I know after this beautiful discussion tonight that love, it needs to go through love, but it's pretty scary. So I don't want to say it's scary. What I just, it takes faith and lots of love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have to expose our vulnerability, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
was, how do you feel about this conversation?
What's this experience?
So I have 3 words.
3 words.
Can't just do one. I feel inspired,
Inspired.
attentive,
Attention.
and reflective.
Reflective.
Words. What was the second one, sorry?
Attentive and reflective.
Attentive and
Attentive.
attentive.
Attentive and reflective. Nice. Like a tripod.
Yeah.
Like a trinity. Like, Michael.
You remember my first word was cross-cultural, so
Yes.
now I would say cross-cultural solutions, and I just add for context an understanding of deep culture, because you have to understand the cultures and the filters through which people see things in order to actually overcome whatever your conflict is. So my word solutions.
Solution.
Cross-cultural solutions.
Understanding can help us bridge anything.
Yeah, I think actually we have to realize that we have a growing culture around younger people. There's something very positive also about technology. We shouldn't say it's all negative, and it should be one way that we should be reaching them, instead of saying it's all negative and it's siloing them and so on. How do we reach them? Because we don't have a medium anymore. We have many mediums.
Too many.
And that's part of the thing that is causing conflict, actually, and it's becoming very difficult for people to have those dialogues because they're only listening to their own sort of siloed areas. But kids are, I think we need to create something that they can use, something useful, an app perhaps. that can
Right.
help them.
I just said because it
Yes.
reminded me of something I didn't get a chance to say, but I came across this fellow's been doing this for 30 years. He's got a family playtime. He's got 209 cooperative games online. And that's something that's trying to move that ahead, but it's just thought instead of learning how to kill people and then go back and kill, it's all cooperative games and it's in 5 categories, starting at age 3 and then 7, 12, whatever, and with children and adults. There's 209 games and working with some people, that would be a wonderful thing to give kids. And I'm glad because that should be in the program.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, it just reminded me, I was always not the norm. So with my daughter and when she had friends over, we played cooperative games because I didn't want anybody to really lose, right? So I would say cooperation.
I would say awareness. We all need to be aware that there are these conflicts and problems, and then you have to ask yourself, what are you going to do about it? It always starts with yourself and then kind of spreads. So be good role models with it.
Awareness. And I gotta say gratefulness to everybody, and maybe you can have the last word.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to say this that didn't say anything?
I would say, when he said love, because you've been calling the neighbor, serve. When we serve someone,
serve.
it shows love, so let's say serve.
Serve, in service.
Yeah, my word will come with a question. Well, you really took my word already. My word was modeling. How, having had all this, how am I going to model what I have heard? And well, my question, I know we're out of time, is if you could just address the issue of, we are all gathered as practitioners, and the idea of the community of practice is for us to discuss, have practical kind of discussions about how we can take this, how we can improve our practice with the things that we are learning. So having had such an important, had this kind of discussion, would you just, what would you say to practitioners out there, some of us in here, who are actually out in the field? How do we bring this into our practice in practical terms?
Well, isn't that the question that we all have have, so I think you start with, for me, you start with yourself. So I look at my own life and my family and friends and where the conflicts are, to be self-aware about that. And then what have I learned and what have I not learned? And I think the thing about having a group discussion is that we give each other feedback, and very candid feedback. And we need to talk about real life situations, which we did with this mediation thing. So I think it'd be really good. I did this with people from the Middle East. I said, pretend you're at the table and you're going to try to solve the Middle Eastern problem. It wasn't so much you're going to solve the Middle Eastern, because there's so many other agendas that had nothing to do with anything good for the people. It's just that too much money is made, there's too much theology. But I think practicing a discussion based on the principles is the best way to keep going. It's like anything else. If you don't practice it, you're going to lose it. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So I think it's a very important thing. So keeping together, that's what we've been doing at CICR. These discussions and staying in touch with each other is really good. And anybody has new ideas, keep it within the group. And it's like building another community. You can learn from each other. And if anybody has an issue, we can talk to each other. So I think we can walk our talk that way.
Walk our talk.
Yeah, you can talk the walk and you can walk the talk. Walk the talk.
If I could just make a comment, I'm really grateful that we've had this, and there are a lot of people involved in bringing it all together. But Esther really has been the one who has given rebirth to these evening gatherings. We used to do the alumni and friends. Mo spoke there. We had about 30, maybe over 30 people there, and it was fantastic having them. You probably spoke before I came there. Like I've been wanting to catch up with Ernie so many times. I think this is only the third or fourth time that I've heard you speak. But there's so much to learn. There's so much to draw on yet. So I'm really very grateful that we've had this. And I'm going to mention, in case people don't know, that Esther's moving on. I was surprised to hear that she'll still be involved, I hope.
She's been great. You've guided me very well. I really appreciate it. And getting my three emails and stuff. And thanks very much for helping put this together. And thank you, CICR.
And on that note, I'll invite the Executive Director of CICR to, say something in closing. It's been a wonderful evening, and I know you would like to.
Well, what a privilege of having this connection with other generations. It just brings, I'm thinking the next generations, brings that sense of responsibility, inspire what would you have done, and how do we work for next generations, with next generations. I'm missing being more engaged with youth in what we are doing, so we have that task. And I wanted to give you, I know that you write books every time, to have Janet just a journal to have reflective practice and share one mug. I'll share one with you too, that we have with our principles. And I was thinking, we have the third party neutral principle, so if you are in resolving a conflict and kind of getting the way, you take a sip of coffee and remind you, oh, listen, or what do I do? I'm sure that you would fill it up with 10 phrases, anecdotes, jokes, quotes that you would bring to help you out, get you out of anything, or solve something, or just put people to reflect. It's a privilege. I look forward to keep on writing the 12 pages without a point or with a point, because all is around connecting with ourselves and the others, being human, and we are grateful that you are here, generously sharing, reconnecting with the community, and inspiring us to do more.
Thank you. Thanks to Jeanette for all of her help too.
Thank you.
Thank you. When I'm giving you emails, there's some stuff from the book, there's the stuff from Brian Maroney and from that I sent, and if you want to get some of those excerpts, make sure that you put down your email address and we'll send you some stuff.
That was a great presentation, Ernie, but what was your point?
All right.
We got your note, Mr.